They must have amnesia. They forgot that I'm him. That Burberry backwoods pack hittin', that pussy smell like a Hellcat V8. We smoking shit in a glass pipe, blowing the Lord's bubbles. I'm sick in the head. V.I. Lenin, What is to be Done, Chapter 4, page 19.
Welcome back to Virtue Signal, the podcast about being moral in amoral times. I am here with Taylor Meanswell.
This shit ain't nothing to me, man.
And I'm here with Andre Kello.
Hello, everyone.
And we are here to talk about What is to be Done by Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, Burning Questions of Our Movement. I wanted to do this because our last episode was about Tao Te Ching, and I wanted to let the Tao flow through me in our selections of the next one. Because I was reminded of this kind of deal when we were reading that, because it's the exact opposite. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to follow that line of thought. So yeah, I had a really hard time with this text. I don't regret it, but it was really, really hard, especially because I just don't know that much about Soviet history. And he's just like intolerable. Oh my God, this guy is just like, I can't with him. So I don't know. What do you want to sort of diagnose or identify about this text so we can sort of get into it today?
Sure. Well, this text is about, it's very specific and contextual to its moment, right? A lot of the references that are made in the text are so specific and of their time that they are almost meaningless to recount. But I think this is, we can safely say, another example of someone posting through it.
Oh, absolutely.
It is ironically a book that critiques the very spontaneity that led us to be reading this book anyways.
Exactly.
Sometimes the Tao leads you away from itself. It's not up to us to understand. But I believe this is written while Lenin was still in exile, 1905 or so. This book is actually, the title is borrowed from a popular 19th century Russian novel of the same name. And the novel What is to be Done confronts the social and economic crisis of late Tsarist Russia, right? And so I'm trying to think, what, in your opinion, is the equivalent?
Like
if
The
I wrote a
Jungle.
book called Sorry to Bother You,
Wait, what did you say, Andre?
I was
The
saying
Jungle.
The Jungle.
Yeah, The Jungle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Like a book that tells everybody, here are all the things that are messed up and what needs to be changed.
And it's really badass invocation as well. Unfortunately, the prose doesn't deliver on that kind of exciting dynamism.
Well, there's like a kind of there is a deliberately programmatic aspect to this text. It is an instruction manual, as Andre was telling me earlier. And that was really hard for me to read it, because in a sense, it's kind of like a piece of technical writing, because it's telling you like directions for use, like it's telling you like where you're oriented, like and how to actually execute something really complicated. So it's not like Adorno in the sense that it's like sort of beautiful and interesting and like about interiority and experience. It's like, here's some shit we need to do. Go do it. Here's what you need to do. So it's different in that sense from everything else we've read. The Tao Te Ching was also an instruction manual, as I talked about, but it used poetry as its method.
Yeah, which, isn't that rare actually nowadays. In fact, we set up this little studio here so we could record podcasts. And so I've been reading a lot of audio equipment manuals. And some of them are actually pretty funny. And they, there's a new synthesizer that I was watching a video about earlier this week that it was introduced at Super Booth, which is a big conference that they have in Berlin each year. And it was this thing called the Melancholytron.
Okay.
And the vaguely European guy who was introducing it was like, the synthesizer is free. The book costs 850 euro. But the book, you get the synthesizer for free. And the book has the stories about why somebody is sad or worried or lonely or whatever problem that they have is. And so what they can do is they can buy the book, and the book has the stories, and the stories help you, but they also describe the process by which you use the machine to create music.
Okay. That is kind of
I
delightful.
feel like we went on a whole geographic circle from France up to the Nordics back
Yeah,
to
I was
Germany
like,
with that accent.
I was all over the place.
I tried to do every accent one by one.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't quite get up to Scotland.
Yeah, I think the idea of a instruction manual being funny or cool or beautiful or weird is a very like contemporary art thing to do, you know? Like it's very like 60s sort of avant-garde.
Well, the Situationists.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
Which we
like-
talked about more than once now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they also, had ideas about what was to be done,
Yes. Yes.
but they had a little bit more fun talking.
Well, and I talked about them in relationship to the Dao De Ching last time too. So, yeah, there's just all like a slurry of all these people and their ideas, and it was just really, really rough making my way through it.
I think you made a really interesting point contrasting Lenin and Adorno's dispositions. And I would attribute that, I guess, to obviously this is kind of moot point, but their specific historical context, meaning Adorno is writing the end of World War II and after, right? What is to be done has been done.
Yeah.
By
Yeah,
the
yeah.
time Adorno is getting to us in Minima Moralia. However, Lenin is still speaking with the urgency and the intensity of like, this is what we have to do, folks.
And when he writes this, the revolution is another 20 years to come before it actually happens. So he's really calling his shot.
Yeah. And it's weird because he's really critical of spontaneity, right? And like wants to do this, like, here's the plan, execute. And it reminded me of this. Andre's heard me talk about this a million times, but there's this guy, his name is George Udice, and he is a Latin American researcher and scholar about like communism and revolt in Latin America. And he calls moments like what is to be done are illustrating or evoking or trying to enact the conjunctural circumstances of the avant-garde. And what that means is that a bunch of stuff has to happen all at once in order for it to happen. And it kind of actually requires spontaneity. It requires like a sort of seizing of the moment and of the means of production, for example. And then usually it's accompanied by like some sort of like act that happened. Like maybe somebody was murdered or there was a strike or something. There has to be a bunch of stuff happening all at the same time. And he's trying to systemize that, I think. I think Lenin is trying to systemize spontaneous elements so that you don't need it anymore. And it just becomes this full like political project. That's what I thought.
Yeah, when you texted me and asked me to take the lead on this, I said to myself, all right, the road became clear to me in that moment that engaging with the politics of the text, while important and we will do briefly, is not the angle we should take.
Yeah.
And what I've come to realize is that for the sake of honoring the slog that it was to read this, and you know what, I'll be honest with you, dear listener, there are some strong differences of opinions behind these three mics about what is to be done and things like that. And frankly, I don't feel like getting into a sectarian debate over a book that I'm not emotionally invested in whatsoever. Right? And so we'll start with the politics and what the book is actually talking about. We can maybe reflect on how well it's aged or not. And then I mostly want to do literary criticism.
Please, thank you so much.
Is that agreeable?
I fucking hate the way this guy writes. And obviously translation, whatever. It goes beyond translation. This guy is an asshole. I hate him. That is what I have to say. Okay, go on. Sorry.
Yeah. So the question posed, what is to be done, Lenin frames as essentially, vastly oversimplifying here. Let me know in the comments how I'm stupid and you're going to put me in a gulag. The question is reform versus revolution, right? He addresses what he's referring to as the tendency of economism in the socialist movement, and that economism, I guess, in contemporary terms, we would just say a reformist, like an electoralist. It's Medicare for all is economism.
He's
Yeah.
also referring to trade unionists.
Yes.
So people who do
Unfairly, I
union organizing. Hey, I'm a big fan of union organizing.
Yeah.
I consider myself to be a syndicalist.
Yes.
I think
You
Lab-
are. You're an anarcho-syndicalist. That's true.
Labor unions do a lot of good in the world. Now, not exclusively good.
Yeah.
But Lenin's point, more or less, when it comes to the labor union organizing, is they're doing that instead of the revolution,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that the most they can ever hope for is simply better conditions for the exploited workers, or what I think he describes as better conditions for negotiating a wage.
As opposed to just like getting rid of the exploitation altogether.
Right. What he's trying to bring about is a kind of different new world, and in order to build the new world, the old world must die. And you don't make the old world die by getting like time and a half.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
Right. It's like and he does make a note, excuse me. He says the workers will use whatever tool is available to them, including legal means and electoralism, et cetera, et cetera. But he argues that there are shortcomings with that to him, all that what he calls trade unionist consciousness will accomplish is advocating the government, whatever that form of government happens to be, for a better deal for labor.
And also, you have to keep doing it forever because, and this is something that didn't actually get mathematically proven until recently, but the capitalists are capturing all of the wealth that they are creating, which means that as time goes by, even if the workers might have a good deal now, the long-term effect is that inflation will rob them. So they have to keep negotiating over and over again forever.
Wasn't that why like the Chinese did like the constant revolution? Like you just have to keep doing it at all times.
Well, yeah. I mean, but that's not terribly different from Lenin's idea of the dictatorship of the proletariat, right? The idea that there is a state of exception, right? And that state of exception may or may not last forever.
Yeah. And he was right in the sense that he accomplished what he wanted to accomplish, except then it fell apart. So he didn't keep up with the doing it all.
It fell apart, 70, 80 years later?
Yeah.
So, did all right.
Yeah.
Damn good run. Damn good run.
But it did end up getting destroyed by a spontaneous movement of the people because they wanted freedom and justice. And the state wasn't really configured in such a way as to provide that to people.
Yeah.
So the whole thing fell apart.
Yeah.
He's so critical of these like spontaneous popular movements. And he says, instead, what you need is like professional revolutionaries who will, bring about exactly the end result that you want. Because the thing about the spontaneous popular revolts is that they don't know what they're going to achieve when they start.
Yeah.
It's like in Guardians of the Galaxy when Chris Pratt he flips off the prison guards and he says, "I didn't know what this machine did when I started using it."
Yeah.
Right. Like the popular uprising doesn't know what the consequences of their actions will be when they start doing them.
I will say for this text, it was the first time, and maybe this doesn't look like about me, but it was the first time where I fully understood and like metabolized the scientific aspect of Marxism. Because normally when people talk about that, I'm like, what do you mean scientific? But it's like, no, they mean scientific as in like objectively correct.
Which
and
is
like
a big difference from Dao De Ching.
enormous difference. Oh my God. Because it's like, this is an experiment that we're executing. And here's how you're going to do it. And I was like, that's the science. That's the scientific Marxism. And I don't know. I've always struggled with that because I was just like, how is this science? And now I fucking got it. So I'm grateful
It doesn't
for
help that they're so fucking audacious about it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
The
yeah.
immortal science.
Yeah.
Come on,
Well, that's always
chill.
that always like made me
The
roll.
science that lasted until 1991.
That always made me
of
roll my
Marxism.
eyes is when people are like, yeah, it's like, and now I like get it. I get it.
None of the other scientists are ever like the immortal science of molecular, chemistry, right? The immortal science of astronomy.
Well, I mean, eugenics people are. Like, eugenics people are like the immortal science of eugenics. Yeah. This is also happening right around the time we're actually like really deeply into eugenics in like Europe.
Well, and it's also the time where hard science is separating itself from the field of humanities, like the 19th century is
Yeah.
when astronomy and astrology become different things, for instance,
Yeah.
too. And so the word science doesn't necessarily mean the same thing to them as we think of today, I don't
But
think.
it's a product of Marxism being an element of an Enlightenment project, right?
Yeah.
Like the reason, one of the things we knew a lot of Leninists when we were in Chicago DSA.
Hmm.
And one of the things they like to say is capitalism is inherently contradictory and unstable and is filled with, all these flaws that will bring about its own demise. It is
Yeah.
not a stable, long-lasting, functional system. It creates economic bubbles. It creates political unrest.
And that's like an accelerationist talking point too, right?
But we're in late capitalism now, and it isn't clear how long that's going to last.
Yeah.
I mean, late capitalism outlived communism in Russia.
Yeah. I mean, to what you're saying about it being an Enlightenment project, I think that's if this book is ambivalent about anything, it isn't really. That's the one thing I think it's a little ambivalent about. Is like, are we re-articulating Enlightenment thinking?
Well, I do think that Lenin had two things going on that were sort of in conflict with one another. On the one side, he thinks that he's right and everybody else is wrong, all the reformists and the liberals and all of these people, because they're concerned with these ideals of justice and freedom.
Mhm.
And he's concerned with a project that has a measurable outcome,
Mhm.
right? And so he thinks that everybody else is being like childish and he's the only grown up in the room. But then also, he's completely unwilling to accept any kind of critique of any idea he has ever had because he doesn't actually care about finding the answer or getting it right or building the immortal,
Yeah.
communist utopia. He mostly seems concerned with proving to everybody else that he has been right the whole time.
Yes, which, like, as leftists, I think we can all relate to a little bit, So that
We don't get power or success, but we do get sweet, sweet vindication.
yes, we do. Yeah.
Now, I think that when it comes to the his argument about what is to be done, he's talking about like a plan for executing a revolution by having professional revolutionaries, having an avant-garde party, communicating with the public through newspapers, having
Through one newspaper.
Yeah.
One newspaper.
right, because if you have two newspapers, that's a problem. He doesn't like when there's two newspapers.
That was the funniest part, and it felt like a joke. It felt like a joke at the end. I was like, okay, so, and this is why you should subscribe to the Chicago Reader. Like, it was so like, okay, buddy. Like, it was also just kind of a very charming old man thing to be like into, like, oh, there's the importance of local reporting. It was just, it was like him becoming his most NPR.
This
Just very
book
briefly.
is a defense of local media.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
But on the one side, he's like, there's no such thing as local circumstances, right? There's the one way you have to do it, and it works everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then, meanwhile, he's made enormous, accommodations to the Russia-specific case, just as every successful revolutionary in history made enormous, accommodations to the local situation in order to create a nationalist project that people could feel good about because feelings are more important than facts.
Mm-hmm. And that is actually what brings me to a point I want to make, in that I found the whole thing about essentially he's trying to rewrite reality through the newspaper, right? It's a point where everyone's literally on the same page. You know what I mean? And it reminds me this is what the tech assholes in San Francisco are doing. They're trying to rewrite our reality too, but in malevolent, evil ways.
Well, not just them. Every political force in the world that seems to have a project and also resources to enact it, one of the things that they do is they attempt to exert force on a discourse through the use of media.
Mm-hmm.
And, that can be TV news channels, it can be, people tweeting.
He's really just advocating for a mass media apparatus. Like, that's all. Like, yeah.
And,
That says what he wants.
That says what he wants to say.
To be fair,
and
Yeah.
all of the powerful institutions and states and everywhere all over the world, part of the way that they enforce their hegemony is through the media.
Yep.
It has only gotten more this way as time has gone by.
Yeah, it's what you see in like every dystopian narrative. It's like about like in Hunger Games or whatever. It's always like
It would be like 40 years after this before like a president appeared on the radio.
yeah.
So like he's saying media is super duper important, and nobody really listened to him except for, his party members for decades.
He was like, we need like a Russian Rupert Murdoch. Yeah, but for his deal with his politics.
Lenin's definitely a guy who will say one thing and do another that doesn't quite contradict. It's just like, well, hey, you were so strident a moment ago, and now you
Yeah.
appear to be making concessions and adopting your thinking.
Mhm.
Why not do that in print? And I guess I understand why, because he's trying to, this book introduced
polemic.
basically the concept of like democratic centralism and the vanguard party, right? This whole first section of the book is talking about this slogan that he hates called the freedom of criticism,
Yes.
right? His line is, no, you're not free to criticize, you're free to toe the line.
Well, he is very anti-anarchism and anti-spontaneity and anti like multiplicity, or like the idea that there could be that anybody else could have anything to say that would be of value that isn't what he is saying. Right? What he wants is to win.
Yeah.
And
Well,
and like message fidelity, message discipline is a thing that politicians now are, the people who are really good at it gain enormous benefit from it. Like look at Mamdani, right? Like every single tweet is either, wow, Mamdani's the best, we love this guy, or some like wonk being like, now that's message discipline. Right? Like
That's the least enjoyable thing about Zoran, is how much he impresses like Vox types.
yeah.
it's the way he is in that. It does sort of remind me of the way that Adorno would talk about how people talk to each other, about how every interaction you have can't be a human interaction. It has to be a political and an economic interaction, because the consequences of like treating each other like human beings are that you might lose your job or get arrested by the police or whatever. And, Mamdani, as much as he likes to, rescue people on his bicycle when they almost get hit by a car, or like, take cats out of trees for old ladies and stuff, when the press talks to him about it, the first words out of his mouth are affordability, affordability, affordability. He never loses his message discipline, and it has an enormous positive effect. He's incredibly popular and successful.
Yeah. One thing I thought about when I was reading this text was like how Lenin would react to like your average queer Facebook mutual aid group. Like, hey, hey, non-binary trans girl looking for, help moving. He would be like, not on my watch.
He would hate that shit.
He would hate that. He would hate it so much. He'd hate mutual aid.
And one of the things about the Leninists that we knew in Chicago DSA, and also, Leninists in general, is that they don't like identity politics. They don't like, social progressivism in general. They are really like laser focused, it seems, on this idea that the only thing that really matters is this Carl Schmitt thing about accumulating and wielding political
And then
power.
they get really like, this is what they critique, that they start critiquing decadence. They end up just being racist and homophobic by just like, by fact, just they have to inevitably, because they're like so focused on this one thing and they see everything in excess of it as counter-revolutionary. And so they end up just being really racist and sexist and homophobic. It sucks. Yeah. That was my thing with Leninists. I was just like, why are just
I went to
Stop.
the May Day rally, and I marched with a democratic centralist group
Hmm.
that I'm not a part of, but I marched with them. And right behind us was the American Communist Party,
Oh yeah.
if you're familiar with them.
Hmm.
Not CPUSA, stupid for different reasons. They are that that decadence. I'm blowing
Yeah.
a dog whistle.
I
You
know.
can't see at home. They're that type, and
Yeah.
they all had neck beards. I'm
I
sorry,
can't. I
each and every
can't.
one of them had a neck beard.
Well, that's messaging discipline.
Hmm.
You know, we gotta have
Right.
that.
But all the Russians also had big beards,
Yeah.
and they won.
Hmm.
But it is one of those context-dependent things.
Yeah.
So maybe shave here
Yeah.
because it's not Russia in the 19th century.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've had beards. I've had no beards. I have a hard time like giving a shit
Yeah.
because I'm an anarchist and I think people should do their thing.
Hmm.
And he hates that. And the reason he hates it is that he's so concerned with winning that he doesn't really care about what he has to sacrifice in order to win.
Right.
Mhm.
Like when you win, like what if you lose something else really important? And then it's like, what's the point of winning?
He doesn't care about human rights. He doesn't care about people feeling good. He doesn't care about building community. He doesn't really care about any of the stuff that we always talk about now when we're in leftist spaces about like what our values are and how we're like living our values. He doesn't care about living. He
He would
doesn't even.
balk
Yeah,
at
no,
that.
no. I there's an aphorism that I have that I always say that I wrote. That's when it's more important to you to be right than to do the right thing, you end up being and doing neither, and that's what kind of happened here, I think.
Well, I'll stick my neck out a little bit and venture to disagree
Please do.
that he didn't accomplish anything. Because for all the faults, he's a blowhard, he's an asshole, he's annoying. He got that shit done.
Yeah,
did.
that's
He did.
yeah.
And I
did.
can't argue with that.
Yeah.
And the stuff that he says about what you have to do in order to get the shit done, the other countries do those things and then they win.
Yeah,
He says,
it really is a how-to. Yeah.
and he admits to all of the things that would be moral criticisms, right? Like, say, for example, um, freedom of criticism,
Mhm.
right? You might think of that as like freedom of speech issue, and therefore an element of human rights, and to curtail that is immoral and unjust, and those are true. Those things are true. He doesn't care. Scoreboard, right?
Yeah.
And so, he says you're gonna go farther if everybody's on the same idea, and maybe the idea is right, maybe it's wrong. Maybe somebody else comes up with a better idea. It doesn't matter. He's describing what's essentially a military organization, right?
Militant, certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in a military, you have a chain of command. And the reason that militaries have a chain of command is so that an enormous number of people who believe different things and want different things, are in different places and have different amounts of information, different kinds of training, they can all work together as a single group in order to achieve an objective. And he had an objective, which was kill the Tsar and his family, all the little babies, kill all the little children, kill a lot of people. And at the end of it, have a state, have a communist state in Russia. And he pulled it off. But in order to achieve that, they had to get rid of all of the newspapers that were being written by liberals and reformists and labor organizers. And they had to purge from the party everybody who disagreed with Lenin about all of his ideas. And they had to, put people in gulags. And they had to do a lot of horrible things that are indefensible.
Well, and industrialization is a bloody process no matter where and when it happens, right? And part of the very first adaptation Lenin makes, right, is to skip the capitalist phase of development anyways. According to Marx's theory of historical
Yes.
materialism, I know you all know this, but we start off, we move from feudalism into capitalism and from capitalism into communism, right? And Lenin was like, what if we just went straight from feudalism to communism?
Mm-hmm.
And then you get there and you're like, oh shit, we still got to build factories somehow.
Yeah.
Right. And you're able to blame it, I guess, on the free market when it happens in England, right? When the serfs get massively displaced and brought into these cities to get like maimed in looms and stuff like that. You can at least say it's their fault, right? But when you slap a hammer and sickle on the same process, now you get people saying, look what communism did to my family, you know, crocodile tears, whatever. But it,
Well, I think that one of the things that we learned about this Hegelian Marxist idea of the progress of history, right, is that these clearly delineated phases are not so clearly delineated, and that in fact the Industrial Revolution does not happen at the snap of one's fingers. It doesn't happen in an instant, and it doesn't happen everywhere at the same time. In fact, all change that occurs anywhere is happening in different phases in different places at different rates.
The future is distributed unevenly.
The future is distributed unevenly, and so, you know, in Russia, you got all these shtetls, right? You have peasants, you have people who are, farming, and maybe they're illiterate, maybe they don't have electricity in their house, but then, you also have educated, industrialized city centers already. And that part of the country is sort of fighting against Lenin, while, the people that he has on his sides are more or less the feudal peasants. And he's an intellectual, and he says that as the intelligentsia comes from the bourgeoisie, you can't just sit around waiting for the proletariat to organize themselves. Marx was a intelligentsia from the bourgeoisie, and so was Engels. And, Lenin says you got to have an avant-garde party. You have to have this cadre who are professional revolutionaries who are going to spend all day and all night every single day doing nothing but trying to win the revolution.
because the workers themselves, left to their own devices, the best that they'll come up with is reform, he argues.
Now, what makes somebody a professional revolutionary? Like, if you do revolution, are you a professional revolutionary?
Well, there's a reason that so many of militants and revolutionaries are people who come from bourgeois backgrounds, is because that gives you the material circumstances that can enable you to access spaces that others wouldn't have access to, have time that others don't have access to, all that kind of stuff.
The proletarian has been disabused of most of their leisure time.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Whereas somebody who can sit around and read books all day is able to, see a little bit past the strike.
Yeah, but just like why I always get so annoyed when liberals try to own people about oh, but Mom Donnie's mom is Mom Donnie's a nepo baby. It's yeah, dude, that's how it works.
I think that there's certainly a conflict of interest when it comes to Lenin, when we're discussing the role of the bourgeois intelligentsia in the revolution. Because as a bourgeois intellectual himself, Lenin wants to still be invited to the fun parties. And so he's not going to, as this well-educated, motivated, and well-compensated bourgeois person, he's not going to recognize that he could do something and then do nothing. He sees, he has vision, right? He's
sound and vision.
He's like a point guard, right? He knows what needs to happen on the floor in order to score. And so he's going to distribute the ball.
And he doesn't care about your feelings. He doesn't care about if you want the ball more than anybody else. No, he's giving the ball to whoever's going to score.
Number one question for him is, how do we win? And everything is on the table.
Well, there's two philosophical concepts that you reveal that are at play in Lenin that he never directly addresses enough for me, possibly because of his dismissive view of moralism, but there is a moral imperative implied in being this intellectual who knows enough but can't, but is unable to turn away, right? I have to do something, right? And then there's also a tremendous will to power, that doesn't seem to get addressed, maybe because it's not a very collectivist idea, right? But this is definitely like Lenin is a great man, according to the great man of history theory, and he wanted to win at all costs more than he wanted to believe in anything. And I'll be honest, good for him, good for all of us. I'm glad he did it. But as you point out, with time, shortcomings become evident, particularly when like the next generation of leadership after Lenin kind of doubles down on the things people don't like so
Secret
much, the
police.
disappearing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know. I think I come to all my political and intellectual interest and knowledge through queer theory. Like that's how I like got into this mess. And so it's like I'm like all about like 1,000 plateaus and multiplicities and like, you know, being alone together and like it's just so like contrary to my whole deal.
And the
It's
thing
really
is,
hard.
I don't think that he would disagree with you that these are good things for people to believe in. It's just that doesn't matter.
It just this is the thing.
He doesn't draw a like important connection between the things that people believe in and want and what is to be done.
Yeah.
He says, look, it doesn't matter whether or not, you know, you think that what I'm doing is, violent or disrespectful or a violation of people's autonomy or, you know, if it, whatever the negative consequences are of anything I'm doing, if I win, I was right.
Yeah.
So, you know, he might say, yeah, obviously the things I'm doing are not just bad, they're evil. But that's simply not important. Like,
right. It's bourgeois moralism to even
bourgeois moralism, the same way
level
that
that criticism
he
at
has a
me.
problem with bourgeois politics, right? He's like, you can't do revolution in public, and therefore revolution cannot be a democracy. You know, you have to do revolution in secrecy, and therefore it has to operate like a military. You know, there has to be discipline, there has to be a regimentation, there has to be commitment. You know, these people have to be professional soldiers.
Yeah, and people perform in different capacities based on their skill set.
And you know, it is not for a soldier to question the morality of their orders.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm fundamentally not a soldier team.
Yeah. You know, reading this, I was struck that, like, when it comes to you personally, you know, the Tao Te Ching, okay, I understand you're having a hard time with that. You can't, like, sit quietly. That's too bad. You definitely aren't doing any of this shit.
Yeah. I'm not doing shit, guys. I'm ineffective. I'm fucking up.
Eleanor has adopted a third position between Lenin and Lao Tzu. It's called being regular.
It's called being normal about it.
A normal amount of fussy instead of like so relaxed or so hypertense.
I'm having a hard time. I'm such an aesthete, you know. I am. Yeah. Also, this felt like very targeted to me when I was reading it. I was just like, "Sir, how dare you?"
So
This is about me now.
it's about all of us in some ways because we're ensconced in like the liberal world order, right? In this book, if you end up reading it, Lenin refers to social democrats.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that, I guess, at the time, apparently was just what leftists were called, right? And what is to be done is the first time delineating between the social democrats over here and the communists
Or the first time,
here.
like programmatically delineating. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah, from a, like, just looking at language, I mean, you look at what the two words are and what do they mean. Social, it means that we care about, like, being pro-social, like doing things for the good of everybody. And then Democrat, we just care about democracy. You know, like, you can't have a, like, social authoritarianism, and you can't have this, like, free market democracy, right? The leftists there are saying we want to do the right thing in terms of authority and also in terms of economics. They're trying to be bottom left corner of the political grid, and the alignment chart, right?
And in State and Revolution, he goes on to really kind of how do you do, fellow anarchists?
Yeah.
Like, hey, this is the idea, is that we're moving towards this way, I promise. Now, if you please come get that piece of cheese out of this mousetrap over here.
Would you
can
say
get
that
started.
Lenin is, and in this piece in particular, a true neutral or neutral evil?
I think he is. I would say I would call him lawful neutral.
Lawful neutral. Wow.
Yeah, because what he cares about are, like he has a set of rules,
Right. Right.
right? He has like he's the situation that we're in right now can't go on, and we know what situation we need, which is communism. So let's just go over there and do that. And we are not concerned with whether or not we are doing good or bad in the world.
Mm-hmm.
We are simply executing the plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that his attitude does contribute to this feeling that we have now, looking back, as though it was monstrous.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at what the Soviets did during the revolution, and they did a lot of nasty things. They killed a lot of people. They sent a lot of, they were persecuting people for practicing their religion. They were persecuting people for not having exactly the right politics. They were persecuting people for, often just like petty things because a party official decided that he wanted to do it because, it was more important to ignore corruption if it meant, increased authority and like the continuation of the authority of the state, even if it meant that, people were enriching themselves and betraying the revolution.
Mm-hmm.
He decriminalized sodomy, though. King.
That's
champ.
pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Andre's like, I see both sides of that issue.
no, there were definitely things that the Soviets did that were incredibly progressive that they get credit for even today, right?
Mm-hmm.
That they did things like let women serve in the military and be in positions of authority, right? That was such a weird, strange thing for the West to see right away that you immediately see Hollywood make really good romantic comedies about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Ninochka is one of the best things I have ever seen in my life. I love Ninochka.
Well, and at the time that the Bolshevik Revolution happened and in the whole interwar period, there was a significant socialist presence in these American entertainment unions.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
stuff like that before they were all purged with the help of a plucky young star named Ronald Reagan.
Mm-hmm.
And so it doesn't surprise me that the Western response to it was to be stimulated and titillated by
Mm-hmm.
this new dynamic that was being uncovered.
And like the idea of the like new Soviet woman was, I think it was stimulating to Western ideas, but it was typically this like classy Roman aristocrat version,
Mhm.
right? Like Greta Garbo
Mm-hmm.
in Ninochka, right? Movie star, right? We're not talking about, like a collective farm and these enormous like Slavic women who
Yeah.
are operating the threshers.
Yeah.
We're talking about like well-read intellectuals who reflect the element of the revolution that was, very formal and very dignified and, well-trained and had a reputation for being humorless
Yes.
and dedicated, but also kind of austere and, hot, right?
Yeah.
And that continues up through the end of the Cold War. You get to Rocky IV,
Mm-hmm.
and, the Russians are hot. Like the Western conception during the Cold War, even before the
Yeah.
Cold War, it was always that the Russians are hot,
Like fembots, kind of. Yeah.
that they are cold and they are hot.
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think calling Lenin a feminist would be a bridge too far. But
He was a lot better than a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't even think you can call him a humanist.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Like,
You can't really.
His attitude seems to be, I will achieve the revolution if I have to kill every Russian in the world.
Yeah, Yeah.
I'll kidnap 1,000 children before I let this company die. A la Monsters Incorporated.
Yes.
Right? And the Kronstadt soldiers were Mike Wazowski and Sully.
Yeah. 100%.
But it had this effect, this approach. It wasn't good marketing internationally, right? Other countries saw the Soviets as being authoritarian and rigid and cruel, and and it made it difficult when the Soviets weren't able to put at the front their ability to help, Cuba have medical schools and nuclear weapons, or they were, helping Angola or, Bolivia or any other part.
Afghanistan, just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Afghanistan and the Soviet intervention there did a lot to make the Soviets look like bad guys at a time when things were going very poorly for them. Over and over again, it was this attitude of we don't care if we are being moral, we are trying to survive, we're trying to keep the state alive. The result all over the world was, well, we don't like you very much.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and ironically, in the years leading up to the Tsar getting his oats was this idea of we could use a dub as a government, so let's go to war. Right? That event presaged the Bolshevik Revolution to begin with, and unfortunately, it also presaged the reactionary counter-revolution. I would be remiss if I didn't. I don't know if it's pushback or just augment this notion of the Soviet Union's collapse. I think it's pretty obvious that by the 80s, and for some, by the time of Khrushchev's secret speech, the writing was on the wall for this collective project that we're all a part of is not probably going to achieve its goals that it set out. And indeed, it may have been a farce for decades now.
All right, so that was our next door neighbor, Joey, who was trying to get us to sign a petition for Ebony DeBerry to get on the ballot for the Chicago School Board. So that was our, neighbor doing electoralism.
Yes. Oh, which would be
You
swiftly.
put him in the gulag, right? He's in the
It's
basement
a woman,
now.
actually. Joey's a woman.
Yeah, Joey was.
That's allowed.
She was telling me the other day that back in the 60s when she was at the University of Chicago, that she was there in spring of 68 when the city was on fire.
Wow.
Yeah.
The days of rage.
Yeah. Yeah. And, that would have been an example of a spontaneous popular uprising. And, in the U.S., I think the general idea is that spontaneous popular uprisings are more or less the only way anything good ever occurs in the United States. So like the civil rights movement, the gay rights movement, the women's movement, the labor movement, they're movements because it's not, one person's individual project. It's a whole bunch of people all doing something all together. The anti-war, whatever the thing is, it's rarely an individual and it's rarely an avant-garde party.
I would argue that the student movement of the late 60s represents an iteration of vanguardism.
Yeah,
Wouldn't you agree?
And about 8 years ago, we when we were making a podcast for Chicago DSA, we interviewed Burner.
Oh yeah, the Weatherman.
Right. The
Lenin condemns that type of stuff too, by the way, in this book.
The terrorism.
Why?
Yeah.
For the same reason that he criticizes spontaneity, it just is only going to get you so far.
It's not an extreme enough measure. You have to do it fully. Okay.
Yeah. So Lenin would not have approved of the French 75 from one battle after another, or pretty much anybody who's doing anything other than exactly what he has in
What
mind.
he believed in is expanding the field of his particular party until it retains dominance and control. He's an authoritarian. That's what we care about.
Go off, King.
Yeah.
Show them. They said you can't get literacy rates to 90%. You said, hold my beer, comma.
Yeah. That's pretty fucking cool. Yeah.
And, it is possible that there was another way to achieve what he wanted to achieve, right?
Mm-hmm.
This was not the only revolution that has ever occurred in the history of the world,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, if we look at, say, the French Revolution, or if we look at the American Revolution,
Mm-hmm.
neither of these things were explicitly communist, right?
Well, and the other thing about Lenin is he pulled off two revolutions,
Mhm.
right? The Russian Revolution is two revolutions. There's the one to overthrow the Tsar, and then there's an interim government in coalition with the liberals for
Mhm.
like 6 to 9 months or so. And then they're like, okay, no, Bolshevik time,
Mhm.
right? And that's, I guess, where he makes that first choice to skip the capitalist phase of development entirely and just tell the liberals to go screw themselves. Thanks for your help. We got it from here. And, kind of did. Won
thing-
World War II a couple decades later. It's hard to do that without an impressive rate of industrialization.
One thing I wanted to talk about, because I got into it on Twitter about this recently, is I want to bring up something aesthetic so I can hold on to it. But Soviet realism
Ooh, okay.
is the worst. It is
Reactionary.
terrible. It is. It's like
Deeply.
it's so like it's like community theater. Like it's always like they were really obsessed with Hamlet. They're putting on all these productions of Hamlet where Hamlet is just like, I'm Hamlet. I'm a revolutionary. Ophelia's my equal. Yay, Moscow. And it's just like, it's so dog shit, because the thing about art, in order to be good, is it kind of has to be a little bit evil. It has to like transgress something a little bit instead of just like affirming a dominant ideology. That's why I think it works visually. Like a lot of Soviet art visually, like we have some in our house, it's like really cool. But once you add a narrative context to it, it falls completely apart.
I'm not the first person to say this, but when Stalin came around, some things went downhill.
Yeah.
And
You are not the first person to say that.
the art is the most striking example. He does this kind of return with a V.
Oh, yeah.
Sort of.
Oh, he's
idea.
such a return Vern guy.
Right, and he's a Russia guy. He's like, I believe in the nation of Russia, which you could argue flies in the face of internationalism, right? But the move from constructivism to socialist realism is, generally speaking, big bummer.
Pretty bleak, yeah.
Big bummer. Like, have you ever seen the constructivist art's so good? The Red Wedge. Beat the Whites with the Red Wedge, one of my favorite paintings ever. It's like a propaganda poster. And then there's the Tatlin's Tower. Have you ever seen this?
Oh, sure.
Wait.
guy,
Oh,
like-
wait, I have seen that. Yeah.
Yeah,
This,
Eric
like-
Wenzel was a big fan of that.
Yeah.
Strange Eiffel Tower-esque thing that, like, the plan was that it
A monument to
moves.
the Fourth International or something. Yes.
yeah.
I forget which international it was a monument to.
And so if you contrast the Tatlin's Tower with the that gaudy shit that Stalin wanted to build that was going to be like taller than the Empire State Building, it's a really good example of the contrast, the juxtaposition between the different eras of the Soviets.
Yeah, I like constructivism. I like suprematism. I like all of those like early 20th century avant-garde art movements that were going on in Russia in painting and in music. Scriabin is one of my favorites. Love Scriabin.
I love Russian futurism too. I think that's really cool. Although they like stole everything from the Italians, but still very cool.
I think that the futurists intended for everybody to take their
Yeah,
ideas.
that's the idea. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah,
So it's
I'm
not
just no.
theft.
You're right. It's not
It's
theft. You're right.
Creative Commons. They're freely
You're right.
distributing it.
But
It's,
no, I love Russian futurism. It's really cool.
and they were deeply invested in the future, which is,
Not unlike Adorno.
yeah, but also a big change from just like a couple of years before that, where they were still essentially an absolute monarchy, which is by the end of the 19th century, a very old-fashioned form of government.
Something about states is eventually they become primarily interested in their own maintenance over any ideological goals they might have. And that's true of the Tsar as well as
I mean, it's
the
the
late
true
Soviets.
of higher education. It's true of every institution, right?
Yeah.
Like every college now is mostly just a real estate investment trust that sometimes offers classes to people.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah, and like states operate the same way, right? They begin as this thing where they care about the things that they're going to achieve, and by the end, it's just about making sure the lights stay on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, as we saw with the dissolution of the Soviet Union, things can be a lot worse than a state primarily interested in its own maintenance, right? When you think about the sorry, I get really emotional when I think about what happened to Eastern Europe in the 90s, as far as the rates of poverty and immiseration, the human trafficking, not to mention the war and the violence. I do believe that conspiracy theory about like human hunting trips to Sarajevo. Um, and I wanted to finish my point before the doorbell rang and the Weather Underground blew up the police memorial in your front yard, which is that while the Soviets certainly for the last 15, 20 years saw the writing on the wall, I think we're in a very similar phase in the United States in the 21st century
Kept
where
thinking
like
about that, yeah.
right, where clearly liberty and justice for all is thrown out, right? And I wonder sometimes if we have a kinship with those late Soviet citizens. The other thing I'll say is that in 1990, I think it was like Gorbachev was like the second to last guy. He was he tore down the wall. Um, Imagine listening to Reagan. He did like not a referendum, but an official like poll in 1990, and over 60% of Soviet citizens said, "Yes, I want to keep the Soviet Union." Right, and so the idea that there was like an internal rot, there certainly was, but that the masses had like fully divested and were like, my country yearns for freedom is not entirely true, which is why I'm always careful to refer to it as the illegal and undemocratic dissolution of the Soviet Union. Now, you
Well,
could say, Taylor, the Soviets didn't care about democracy, to which I would say, shut up.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what the ideologically consistent thing is. We take the line that's going to lead us to power.
it wasn't that long ago. Like, I have faint memories of when it happened. I was born in 84, and when I was, 6 or 7, that was in the news, and 6-year-olds watch TV.
Mhm.
The people my age over there, they watched it fall apart. They watched it, turn into something that a lot of people are not very happy with. And, we're, like you say, we're watching something similar happen here in the United States now. And that is also what happened in France.
Yeah.
For the French Revolution, right? Like, the system wasn't working. Everybody was unhappy. The rulers were acting like nothing, mattered to them. Like, there was no way for anybody to have any kind of an effect that would make anybody's life better. And it was sort of like people were, pushed up against a wall. There was no other thing but revolution.
This is the thing, like, I feel like we've been at the part of the timeline in moments like these where people are about to get their heads chopped off, but like it hasn't happened yet.
Well, Lenin would say that's because there's not a vanguard guiding the spontaneity of the masses toward
Yeah.
the beheadings.
Yeah, no, that's
basically,
right.
or whatever. The French Commune destroyed the guillotine. Did you know that? That's a fun fact. That
I didn't
love.
know that.
They said,
In 1871.
yes, they said this was the tool of the bourgeois revolution. This is the socialist revolution.
Wow.
Now, looking back, it's like you probably should have like kept your guns loaded. Actually, instead, I wish you would have been a little bit bloodier because you might have lasted longer, but maybe not.
Well,
Maybe
there's
that's-
different ways in which we romanticize all of these different revolutions, and at this point, like, it's part of, I would say, the American character to like romanticize revolution
And not do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you look at the Paris Commune, right? Like, all of these beautiful, sad stories about people dying for a cause they believe in, right? And the Paris Commune was a spontaneous, popular uprising, and they didn't have a plan, and guess what happened? They all got killed.
I was thinking this is why Americans.
Crucially, sorry, just one. Crucially, as happens with a lot of revolutions, competing factions of the bourgeoisie and the remaining monarchies suddenly set aside their differences to screw over the Paris Commune, to fund the White Army in Russia, right? To continue that campaign of external pressure for decades until it eventually collapses in the 90s, right? There is a way that, for all the ways that the various factions of capital compete against each other, they do find a way to link arms and come together as soon as they see the red flag flying in the
Yeah,
distance.
that's the real internationalism.
Interesting.
Good point.
Oof.
Yeah.
I just wanted to go back real quick to the point about like how Americans our deal is like romanticizing the revolution without doing it. And I think that's why we're so good at making entertaining films and stories, is because that's like the only reality to us. That's like our constructed sort of national fantasy that we all like live in all the time. So like while we can't actually get anything fucking done, we can, make really good stories. Whereas like in the Soviets, like, yeah, they're making terrible theater. But, they're at least, getting everybody fed and the literacy rates up.
Everybody can read the screenplay.
Yeah.
like they couldn't before.
Yeah.
Now, I've been guilty of romanticizing the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
As
Not me.
No,
as
never.
as an anarchist, I have huge problems with the KGB, with the gulags, with all of the ways in which the Soviet Union was guilty of what are essentially crimes against humanity, right? Inexcusable, horrible things that resulted in an enormous amount of human suffering. But
I love that. But
However,
they did get a lot of people to work on time, so who's to say if it was good or bad?
yeah.
Like, I do like the way Soviet stuff looks.
I know.
And I keep Soviet stuff around. Like, I've got this Lel RC multi-effects unit here, and it is weird, and I love that it's weird. And everything that's Soviet is like a little bit sturdier than it needs to be and a little bit shittier than you want it to be. And I've got like a wristwatch, and it breaks, and I've got, I've got an ashtray, and it's not good. It's like,
wait, what makes it a not good ashtray?
It's made of pewter, right? And pewter is this material that you only really use when you need to make something out of metal and you don't have any money.
Okay.
It is toxic, but it's fine because it's an ashtray. You're not really like licking it.
Well, we aren't, yeah.
Yeah.
Some people do. That's cool, and I respect that because I'm not a DSA neckbeard.
the most common personal note here, I've searched on the internet for many years now, kept an eye on the various listings for Soviet artifacts and memorabilia.
Mhm.
By far, the cheapest and most abundant little curio from Soviet history is Chernobyl first responder medals. You get those the cheapest, and there's the most of them available
Okay.
for sale.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know that a ton of people who got those originally are still around to like cling to them.
Very few original owners of
Very
Chernobyl
few
first responder.
original owners. Now, Chernobyl is an example of one of these things that was used at the time and was used recently in the HBO miniseries as a kind of cudgel to beat the late Soviet era with, right? To say your state isn't capable of continuing. Right.
Because they tried to deny it, which is hilarious. They tried to be like, no, nothing happened. And we're like, we have the Geiger meter.
Well, yeah, because like so much of, Lenin says that the revolution has to happen in secret, and then the revolution never stops. So then everything is in secret. So you have the KGB operating not just in every city in Russia, but operating all over the world. You have spies, which we romanticize. We even romanticize the spies, right?
Yeah.
The TV show The Americans.
You love that show.
With you got Philip and you got Elizabeth, and they're great. And a moment that I remember that I really like from that show is that they're discussing like the future of their daughter Paige and whether she's going to become a spy that works for the Soviet Union. And they're at first reluctant because they're like, it's dangerous work. She's going to have sex with people she doesn't like. She's going to have to risk her life. She's going to have to, live a double life until she dies. It's a horrible way for a human being to live. But you're like a hero, right? You're saving the world, right? They keep like putting it in that context of like, we are stopping the Americans from blowing up the world with their nuclear bombs because they're all lunatics. But then they're like, okay,
Shout out the Rosenbergs, by the way.
yeah, who
always.
saved
Spiritual
the world,
gangsters.
saved the
Truly.
human race.
Truly. And then Ethel stealing the show in Angels in America. Like,
Yeah.
love her.
Oh yeah.
It's one of my favorite parts. Yeah.
No, we were all so much bigger before the whole body thing started.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
And so, but what they're talking about, like their reluctance to allow their daughter to become one of these like secret Soviet spies, and they're like, oh, but she can be a peace activist, she can be a trade unionist, right? They're like they're pointing at all the stuff that Lenin hated and being like, that's an acceptable alternative, right? That you can do that stuff. That's okay. Like within the American context, it's asking a lot for to even be like aware of class, let alone be
Oh, yeah.
a trade unionist. And the thing is, in the U.S., trade unionists get killed too.
Yeah, I know. There's a reason they're in that famous statement by that pastor. First they came for the trade unionists side out, speak out, because they do shit and people in power don't like that.
I'll make the case. I'd like to believe that there's few other people who are more conscious of their status as a first world American pig. I would like to make the argument that the most bloody and violent suppression of workers' movements did happen in the United States. You know what I mean? Like they were dropping bombs in West Virginia on strikes. Like it's crazy, right? And so when we ask ourselves, like, how did America get so backward? Well, it was a lot worse for the pioneers of our labor movement than it was in, say, France, where the cops don't shoot you.
Yeah. Well, in France, like the people get upset if the yellow light goes on too long at an intersection and then they start burning cars.
Yeah.
Right. It is on a hair trigger over there. They got
Americans
that thing
had
on.
that beaten out of them promptly.
Yes. Now, in America, we do continue to romanticize the revolutionary struggle, but in a kind of bizarrely hypocritical and incomprehensible way, like stuff like the Newsies.
Yeah, all of our politics are incomprehensible, though. It's just a disaster.
There are, like, we'll see, Harlan County War, Harlan County, USA, right? We'll see all of these like true real life examples of ways in which the state and the capitalists, just in public demonstrated that they are above the law, that they don't care who they have to kill in order to hold on to power, that their entire project is simply about immiserating the poor. It never results in class consciousnness.
Kind of an anti-Lenin in that way. Shadow realm Lenin of like, I'm pursuing my goals regardless of the means.
Yeah. Yeah, ends without means, as opposed to means without ends.
Yeah, and you can see something like Mattawan, right, which is about these like trade unionists who are in this rural community trying to organize these workers, and about the capitalist pigs who get sent down there to murder everybody. And,
Coca-Cola Death Squad, come see our improv show Tuesday night. Just kidding.
And you can have people recognize that these are true stories, and you can have Chris Cooper get nominated for an Academy Award, and you can have, everybody recognize exactly what the facts of the situation were, and it changed nothing.
Well, that's what Mark Fisher would call capitalist realism, right? Which I've always struggled with because I think he misunderstands what realism is, but that it works for this.
Maybe he's using it in the context of like ball culture, like ballroom
realness, capitalist realness. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I also think there's a weird tendency for Americans in terms of how we romanticize labor and revolutionary struggles to like romanticize Appalachia in particular.
They're the noble savage.
They are such the noble
internal colony.
It's
the
crazy.
people who have the most in common with the Russian peasant.
Yeah.
Like there's shtetls in West Virginia.
Yeah.
Today.
Yeah. Dolly Parton talking about how her father was the smartest man she ever met and he couldn't read. And I'm like, I believe you. Like, I 100% believe you.
I come from South Carolina, and there are places in South Carolina that are still this way. And, maybe if we have a Soviet revolution, then somebody will go to Tryon and, like put electricity in the classrooms and teach the children how to read and, like get everybody working on the collective farms and stuff.
I volunteer to be the John Jacob Niles and show up and pay like young, like 12-year-old girls with like pennies to have them sing for me. And then I'll write down the music and then make money off it. I'll do that. I can do that.
There does seem to be this sort of like conflicted nostalgia for this era when it comes to contemporary depictions. The movie Cold War, about this like beautiful romantic relationship between this man and this woman who are involved in like the music industry in Eastern Europe during the Cold War. And things don't go well for them. But you do get this sense that there is like kind of excitement about being part of a larger project, but that it gets mitigated by the oppressive and violent subjugation of people by the state,
Mhm.
right? And the thing is that that state violence continues, but we don't have like schools anymore.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We don't.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We don't have any of the stuff we used to have to justify the violence of the state. But now the violence of the state is greater than it has ever been.
Well, and that's the common line, not to open a whole new can of worms, but that's the common line in defense of China, right? That we hear from the contemporary American leftist, right? Is that sure, you don't have as many civil liberties. Nobody denies that. But you are more free because you own your own home, because you're not getting nickel and dimed at the grocery store, because this economic parasitism
Well, they don't
is
have landlords.
Yeah.
famously.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Something happened to
Famously.
them.
They read What Is to Be Done and said, you know what? I'm joining the Vanguard Party. No questions asked.
I cannot feel bad about what happened to the Chinese landlords.
Yeah.
Nobody makes you be a landlord. You chose to like steal from people who needed a place to live. You chose that. Nobody's like, you always have the option of not being
You just
a
simply don't do it.
Just don't be a
I
landlord.
do it every day. I just don't
None
do
of
it.
us are landlords.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a landlord. You know what you can do?
Andre invoices me $1,000 after every episode for studio rental.
That's tax reasons. Right? You never actually have to pay those.
It's okay when the party does it. I see.
Yeah.
Well, this is what is to be done. I don't know what to tell you.
I think that I want to say if there's anything from here that you find like actionable for us.
Like a lesson that can still help people. I think there are a lot of them, actually.
Okay.
I think that the thing about communication is absolutely true.
Mm-hmm.
His comms plan was strong.
Yeah.
I think that he understood something about the way that, revolution interacts with public discourse that maybe was missing from Marxism before him and was preserved in all Marxism afterward, which is maybe part of the reason that it's called Marxist-Leninism.
Mm-hmm. Maybe, perhaps.
I don't think it's a good idea to throw your morals in the trash in order to accomplish a revolution. But that sort of thinking might lead the human race to its own extinction.
Right.
One of the reasons that Lenin believed that the stakes were high enough that he could disregard bourgeois morality was because, and people still continue to say this with increasing, relevance, that it's communism or barbarism, right? Those are the stakes. And in a world where the the environment is being destroyed and AI is coming to take everyone's jobs, and increasingly fascism is destroying our civil liberties anyway, it's kind of hard to argue with his logic there. Like if people like him had succeeded in taking over the world, we probably wouldn't be dealing with the imminent collapse of the entire global ecosystem. We probably wouldn't be dealing with the return of the fucking Nazis.
Yeah.
Like the stuff that is a big problem right now is all stuff that the Soviet Union was good at dealing with.
Better than almost anyone else.
They were very good at killing Nazis.
Yeah.
And they were really good at like figuring out what an important social program was on a large scale and making it happen.
Yeah.
They were, all the stuff that we're complaining about is going to kill every human being alive. They were good at fixing that.
Maybe one thing we could do is we could get really into gymnastics. Maybe that would help.
Well, Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
Yeah. the Olympics was for a long time in the West like our primary means for engaging with the Soviet Union,
Yeah.
right? Like there were like missile talks and nuclear testing talks, and there was the space race and all this stuff. But when it came to like, Americans don't really engage with the world. They engage with media about the world. And the only media that the Soviets were creating that was being consumed by Americans was ice skating routines and
Mhm.
hockey
Oksana Bayul.
hockey games and
Ballet.
ballet and gymnastics. And they were good at that stuff because it's essentially gym.
Yeah.
Like the Olympics is a lot of fun and it's cool and everything, but it's gym.
Yeah.
It's just gym. And
Internationalized gym.
yeah, and a Soviet nation state is good at gym.
Mm-hmm.
The Russians were always good at that stuff. They were always very fit. They work hard on the damn farm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it gave people this idea about like what does communism look like, right? What it looks like is you use the Bible for toilet paper and you're very good at fencing. That's what communism is. And, we were hoarding toilet paper during COVID in a capitalist state.
Yeah.
And we've never been good at fencing.
Well, we weren't, but others were. Yeah.
The bidet family.
It's just hard to argue that our thing was better considering where we are at now.
It's the rupture has occurred. Like we are like exposure and critique. Where's the fixing? Where's the change?
Well, I think that's a very interesting point, and I think that Taylor's version of the current moment, the meta-modern moment, is that we're constantly repeating that
Yeah.
contradiction
Oh
between
my
the modern
God.
and the postmodern without the resolution that, in my opinion, was supposed to be communism. It just didn't happen like that, and so now we're in this loop.
I think that's right. I think that both are happening at the same time. And it can't, it's like the center cannot hold, except it keeps holding, and then you think it's going to not, and then it's like,
Well, I think one lesson we can learn is that the internationalists were right, and allowing capitalism to continue to thrive elsewhere in the world was
Yeah.
eventually the thing that killed the Soviet Union.
yeah, yeah.
You can't just build socialism in one country like Lenin and
Gulag. No, that was Stalin. To be clear.
okay,
Make up for my dad.
Stalin wanted socialism in one country. Okay, well now you've got socialism in no countries. Are you happy now? You had one and you lost it. If you'd done everybody, we'd still have it right now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is due in part because of Mao telling Stalin to go fuck off, but you could argue, at least on its face, the largest economy in the world is nominally a socialist economy. Has it proven since the 80s to be that different from regular capitalist development? Separate question, not going to argue that. But
I don't know what we're
China's another example of shit, they got it done.
Yeah, but what is China turning into? I don't know.
I don't
Yeah.
understand it either, to be honest.
I don't think we're supposed to know.
I mean, they seem to be like winning,
Yeah.
but what does that mean? Like, it's very clear what Lenin means when he says what is to be done, right? What he wants to achieve. And what he wants to achieve is the Soviet Union. He wants a communist state in Russia, right? The Chinese had their revolution, and now they have their state, and they are in the process over a very long period of time of instigating market reforms that increasingly allow for an extraordinary industrial development all across the country and all across the world. Their Belt and Road Initiative is the thing that is pushing forward all kinds of development in Africa and in the Indian subcontinent and everywhere. But I think something that they seem to like focus on from the very beginning was the idea that these values that they have are not like Lenin. They're just something that we use as a thing to talk about when really the only thing that matters is state power. China does seem to care about certain things. But I'll be goddamned if I could tell you what they are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it from the outside it seems so incoherent. Like, yeah, you're winning, but
What are you doing with
yeah,
that?
toward
Mm-hmm.
what?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is the goal that you're eventually we're going to have the Chinese system here? What does that even look like? Are we is are they very happy with just doing China forever? It's just China,
They don't seem interested in like colonization.
which is like the opposite of the way that the U.S. Government treated them for
Yeah.
75 years,
Yeah.
which was that
They're coming for us.
they're coming for us, right? The domino theory, right? You got to go and you got to have 50,000 Americans die in Vietnam to prevent the Chinese from taking over the country. You got to send people to die in Korea. You got to send people all over the country to combat Chinese hegemony in East Asia. And that ended up being a giant waste of time.
Mhm. Yeah. Pointless.
Right. Leftist infighting took care of what Nixon could not
Mm-hmm.
by dividing the Vietnamese and the Chinese. I didn't mean to open a whole Southeast Asia can
No,
of
no, no,
worms.
no, it's fine.
No.
It's
I
good.
mean, and it also matters that, there have been various phases of cooperation and antagonism among socialist and communist countries all across the world, right? There has been, it isn't just like there's the West and the East, and they are like, in our country, we, for decades, depicted the Eastern Bloc as, being completely unified, when in reality, Enver Hoxha in Albania is, splitting with the Chinese, and he hates the Soviets, and, Tito in Yugoslavia is doing his own thing, and there were all of these different ways in which there was this multiplicity, an actual real multiplicity that created huge international political and economic and military problems. Why, after these countries succeeded and it was clear that the same thing wouldn't work in all these different places, it was like they were allergic to internationalism, despite the fact that they were being depicted as being internationalist from the West the entire time. And I do think it is the legacy of Lenin.
Mm-hmm.
This idea that the thing that we are doing is we are trying to build a state and keep it.
Mm-hmm.
And everything else is negotiable.
Yeah. What, Taylor?
I wonder if I was inspired. I felt the spirit moving through me to end with
The Tao?
another verse.
Okay, yeah.
Not from the same source. This is from the poet Langston Hughes. I'm sure we've all heard this. Lenin walks around the world. Frontiers cannot bar him. Neither barracks nor barricades impede, nor does barbed wire scar him. Lenin walks around the world. Black, brown, and white receive him. Language is no barrier. The strangest tongues believe him. Lenin walks around the world. The sun sets like a scar. Between the darkness and the dawn, there rises a red star. Thank you for listening to the Virtue Signal podcast.